Well, let's start with what's going on in Ukraine and the change that appears to be happening right now. We look like we're on the verge of a Ukrainian collapse. So a bunch of big signs were happening over the weekend that the Western war machine and the propaganda against Russia is starting to fall apart, starting to fray at the edges. First, let's just talk about the military side of things. We never thought we'd see this. This is an Associated Press report from today. And you know it's bad when the Associated Press says that shit is hitting the fan. As Ukraine loses troops, how long can it keep up the fight, is the Associated Press headline.
It's talking about how they are losing up to 100 troops per day. They sort of insinuate that it's to death, but just last week, the Western media was reporting that it's not necessarily that they're all dying. Several of them are just hanging up their hat and quitting. They, for context, point out that at the height of the Vietnam War, the U.S. was only losing 50 soldiers today. Per day.
Per day.
I did not mean only. That's obviously an atrocious death count.
Yeah. So according to reports in the eastern Ukraine today and over the weekend, Russia has almost complete control now of the Donbas region. And that's all Russia needs, basically, in order to completely cut off Ukraine from the world. Now, I spoke to Kevork Almassian, who runs a Syriana analysis, and he just returned from the Donbas region, and I spoke to him yesterday about what this belt section of Ukraine actually means for Russia. And he says, look, if they get this belt region, it's over. It's game over. Really. So take a listen to Kevork.
First of all, Russia is not going to lose this war. And anyone who says Ukraine is winning, they don't know anything about the war. They don't read maps. If you check the map of the control over Ukraine, you know how Russia is grabbing the land in order to turn Ukraine into an inland. So it will deprive Ukraine from its geopolitical importance. Russia doesn't need to occupy Ukraine. They just need to occupy from Donetsk, the Donbas region, okay, all to Mariupol and all the way to Odessa. Just the belt. And when they do that, Ukraine is irrelevant. They will lose their geopolitical importance, and they will lose the wheat. And this is very important. The food security that we were talking about. So after this war, Russia will be in control of like a very big share of the energy and a very big share of the wheat. So it will have Russia will come out of this war stronger, and those who will pay the heaviest price are the European countries, and especially Germany.
So let's talk about Germany, because we'll get to Germany in a second. Thanks, Kevork, for that. But the other big military piece of this is the heavy weapons. Okay, so we're just focused on the military section of this. We'll talk politics on this in a second, and I'll talk about Germany. The big piece is military and the heavy weapons. Putin warning the West overnight that they will retaliate and they will hit parts of Ukraine that they've left untouched if NATO starts funneling heavy weapons into Ukraine, and that's exactly what's happening. Russia attacked Kiev overnight. Everyone's shocked about it. Russia was saying they were going to do it. Why? Well, NATO started sending heavy, longer-range weapons into Ukraine, so Russia attacked them and other targets in Ukraine, and they have left alone. So this is interesting, because if you look at what happened in Serbia, and you look at what happened to the attacks on bridges and roads by NATO forces, and they already knew that the army had moved across those bridges. They already knew that they had moved across those bridges, but there was no reason to attack those roads and bridges and infrastructure, and they did anyway. And Russia has left bridges and roads largely intact and infrastructure largely intact inside of Ukraine. Well, guess what? Now they're not, probably, because now that if they've been warning that if you keep sending these heavy weapons, we are going to start taking out targets that heretofore we weren't touching. We were leaving bridges intact. We were leaving roads intact. We were leaving most infrastructure intact. And now, likely, we are going to start attacking those. Now, I spoke to a NATO pilot today who told me about some of these heavy weapons. And one of the things he told me was fascinating. He said, look, Russia has been using air-to-ground training in Syria for 10 years. They are excellent at it. When they have no air power fighting back against them, they are absolutely relentless, and they're destroying everything. And he said, I'm actually surprised it hasn't been more eviscerating They have absolutely destroyed. So the moment we place one of these like HIMAR vehicles in there, or we send these things through from Poland or wherever they're coming from, Spain announcing they're sending in heavy equipment, these things coming in from NATO, doesn't matter where they're showing up, they're destroying them before they have a chance to even set up.
Which means that the people transporting them will die?
People transporting them will die. The people that are going to be setting them up in the field and getting them set up are going to die. The warehouses where the drones are being kept, they're getting destroyed. And Russia's warned, like, if you send these, we will take them out. And so they don't even have a chance to get them set up, and they're being destroyed. And we're spending $40 billion funneling money into there. Where's it going? It's going a lot of these weapons are being sold off on the black market, and a lot of them are just being destroyed before they have a chance to be used.
I mean, so then those of us who live in the West are signing off on this, right? And so I understand the counter argument, like, well, then what, right? Do we just let Russia like go and plant flags and continue to set up and expand, right? So that's the counter argument. But at the same time, if you are sending people to their death to send in weapons that will be retaliated against, you know,
or to your point earlier, they're quitting, you know, so they're saying we're underpowered. We just don't have we're not going to do this. We're not going to like sacrifice ourselves for the sake of this right now. You're not supporting us. We're just being destroyed. And Russia is just picking them off left and right. Well,
last week, the United States played this sort of Goldilocks game where the president said originally, we're not going to send any long range weapons. And then the president said, yes, actually, it wasn't the president. It was spokespeople inside the White House said, no, we're going to do that. And then the president came back and said, well, maybe medium range, right? So just today, Great Britain said, we got them. We'll send the long range weapons. We'll just send those along.
So we'll send them, and Spain also saying that we're going to send them along.
Yeah.
And guess what? They'll be destroyed the moment they get there. So now on the politics side of this, so we talked the military side of this, sort of an update there. I just want to talk about some of the politics that you're starting to see crumbling here. So Germany, according to Der Spiegel, basically saying that Germany doesn't trust Vladimir Zelensky. You're wondering, like, where are the heavy weapons from Germany, or why are they not coming there? According to Der Spiegel, if they are supplied, we will draw our appropriate conclusions and use our weapons, which we have enough of, Putin says, in order to strike those objects that we have not yet struck. One of the big concerns from Germany is that they are hesitant because they have a history and a memory of what has happened there. There's historical reasons. So Olaf Scholz is basically like, we have a memory of tanks going into the Soviet Union. And so Germany, according to Der Spiegel, Germany has been hesitant in sending tanks to Ukraine to counter Russian forces due to, quote, historical reasons, government sources have told Der Spiegel magazine.
I mean, that's kind of a funny way to say, we learn from past mistakes.
Right.
We've done this, it didn't go well, so we don't want to do it again.
So we're just kind of waiting.
Even though there seems to be all our buddies who want this, right? We kind of don't.
I think this part is really interesting. Like the Germany section of this.
Yes.
Like having an awareness about, they've lost confidence in Zelensky. Germany's basically admitting, like, we don't trust him to not allow these tanks to go into the wrong hands. And also,
yes,
we also are reluctant because we know who's running the show in the military there.
But even so, like, if all of these stories are to be believed and they're just sort of dispirited and untrained forces, why would a responsible government send heavy weaponry in when we don't know who's there to run it, who knows how, and if they're even going to stick around, right? Not to, like, yes, let's take this Azov piece and put it aside because it's highly reported, right? But it almost doesn't matter as a piece of it anymore. Of course it matters, right? But given that that's the most contentious piece, it almost doesn't matter if there's just a crumbling infrastructure and no military. Then maybe we don't send guns there.
So we see them coming, like, if you're Russia, and I have just told you my discussion with a NATO jet pilot today, highly decorated, by the way, and highly decorated Afghanistan veteran, by the way, and who said just the air power from Russia is so dominant. Like, you're going to send these tanks, they know exactly where they're coming from. And guess what? A lot of them are coming through from Poland. So I'm going to bring you this story. We talk about the crumbling infrastructure and all of this. I just want to paint a picture for you because the stories overnight are bad, really bad for Ukraine on this. Poles told to forage for wood to heat homes. This is Poland. Like, this is how we thank you, Poland, for allowing us to use your country basically to funnel all sorts of heavy weapons and to take all of the refugees and everything else. Poles told to forage for wood to heat their homes.
Well, be like the ant, because we got a long hot summer here in Europe. So start gathering now for winter.
It's like what they do in Montana. Like if you live in Montana, you want to, and you're stocking up and you're relying on wood for your wood stove.
Yes.
Like you start now.
Yeah. Because,
you've got 2 months of summer and it starts snowing. I lived in Montana, it starts snowing like September 1st, or September 20th. So you better get ready for that long, cold winter. And this is how we thank you. This is what heating oil situation is right now for Poland. So go out and grab as much wood as you can.
Or grab a person. Mm-hmm. Did you know the Puritans, they used to do something called bundling, where they would send a man and a woman in to cuddle up in a room when they were courting. Like, oh, would you like to maybe marry my daughter? It's so stinking cold. Why don't you go into a room and cuddle up, and then
see if it works out?
And they would get bundles of joy 9 months later, because they would do this bundling.
Well, they would actually wrap the male up in almost like a straitjacket sort of device. Like it was an actual wrapping. That's where the bundling they would. Yeah, so there was no funny business.
But then there usually
nobody ever got
funny
out.
business. Yeah.
I mean, if their genitals are exposed, then I don't know. What are you wrapping up?
If you want it bad enough.
If you want it bad enough, you can break through a straitjacket. I know.
That must be a really weird way to go on a first date.
Right. Here's my first.
Can we get one of those for when our daughters start dating?
I would love that. Hi, Johnny. Nice to meet you. Here's the straitjacket you'll be wearing tonight when you go out with my daughter. When you go to the
prom with Ava.
But I won't be able to dance at all. I don't care.
All right, we are way off topic. I'm sorry.
But thank
got
you.
excited
Thank you for derailing us. But finally on this political piece, I just want to mention what Hungary has said to Zelensky. So again, we talked about Germany. We talked about Poland. We talked about, now we're going to talk about Hungary, because overnight we're learning about this diplomatic row, as the Brits say, that has erupted between Kiev and Budapest. Senior officials of the two countries trading insults over each other's mental health. Basically, Hungary has called Zelensky crazy. Basically saying, hey, I can't recall when a leader of a country in need of help would dare to speak out against anyone in a fashion like President Zelensky did. Not only against Hungary, he says, but even against German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. This coming from Hungary's parliament, Laszlo Kovar, who's blasting Zelensky for this. One should threaten enemies, not those that you want to make your friends. Is there some kind of personal mental problem, and I don't know what can be done about it. So the love affair of Vladimir Zelensky in Europe is starting to wane, I would say.
I mean, look, the guy's got pretty terrible hand at this point that he's been dealt, right? But the problem with all of this is all of the love affair of having him at the award shows and putting him on the cover of magazines that when he cannot answer for militants that are inside of his military right now, and just letting us think that they could sort of be scrappy enough to push back Russia, mighty mother Russia, has been really dispiriting for those of us who just want the truth, right? We're not rooting for anybody to win or lose at this point. We want what's best for humans, for all humans.
Well, and as Kevork and I talked about yesterday, he, when Zelensky took power, he went out and met with the Azov battalion, and he's, look, I'm the new president. You need to respect my wishes here. And they laughed at him. The Nazis laughed at him. And we showed the video here on the show, right? I mean, we talked about this. We showed the video here on the show. And the Azov battalion's like, come on, little man. You're not our president. So he was up against this total, his military that's really not responsive to him. You can see that in the videos they've been releasing saying, we're quitting, we're done. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.